let's hop right into it because there was one story about this topic and I was like, should I get into it? And then there was another story about the topic, and then there was another person that came up about this topic, and so now it's time. I cannot put up with it any longer. We got to talk about it. That is athletes on social media. A lot of guys are coming out and speaking out about some not so great stuff they are hearing on social media after poor performance, and even sometimes after pretty good performance. This is also a subject I have a whole bunch of experience in. So let's get into this and talk about the story that prompted me getting into wanting to talk about this in the first place. All right. This is Lance McCullers, and he recently had to get 24-hour security put on his family because of death threats after a very poor outing he had where he was unable to get out of the first inning. Now, if you remember about Lance, he has been hurt for like 3 years. Okay, he had flexor surgery. He had Tommy John. It's been a long time coming for him to come back. So there's gonna be hiccups out of the gate, guys. People are rusty. If I tried to come back now, I'd be rusty. So to hear this type of stuff, first of all, fills me with anger because no one deserves death threats no matter what, not even unless. What I just say? I said unless. There is no situation where that should happen, okay? Fortunately, he had the support of Jim Crane and the Astros in order to help him take care of this. But this is not the first thing that we've heard about. There is one quote there's one piece of this story that I want to tell you about before I bring in some other examples here. But one of his two daughters, his oldest daughter, a 5-year-old, he has two, overheard her mother on the phone talking to somebody about the threats, presumably trying to get logistics all settled out and figured out so that you can just make sure that everything's taken care of. And she was, understandably confused on what was going on, and she knew that there were threats being made, but she didn't know why or where. And when Lance came home from work that night, she goes, "Daddy, why are we being threatened? Who wants to hurt us?" And as a new parent of an 8-month-old, I can't imagine how that would feel. And that broke my heart. Absolutely just devastated me. And that is not something you should ever have to explain. It's sports, okay? We're gonna get in that. Like, I'm gonna say that a lot in this segment, but it's sports. But I want to talk a little bit about why this stuff happens and why our wires get crossed a little bit in terms of intent and how desensitized we become to this stuff. So I myself, though I receive very few death threats specifically, a lot of death threat adjacent, just horrible, vile stuff being said anonymously on the internet. But Lance is not the first guy or even the most recent guy to have to deal with this stuff. There's two Red Sox recently talked about it. Liam Hendricks has been told that people have said, "Hey, I wish the cancer would have taken you," because he again, a guy who was hurt for 2 years, including non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. He had to battle cancer in the middle of this all, right, in the injuries. And he is understandably rusty as well. Oh, look, another guy who just had Tommy John surgery and is trying to come back and figure it out, getting death threats. Both of these guys have said that death threats have come their way to where they had to start, limiting their use of social media, which, is the obvious a solution. On those guys' same team, we also know about this that happened earlier in the season in Cleveland, where Jarren Duran, who recently was on the Netflix documentary that followed the Red Sox last couple of years, where he confessed that he attempted to commit suicide, to hurt himself, and that fortunately he didn't follow through or wasn't able to do it. But that is a courageous thing to talk about at all, and for someone to yell at you that they wish you just would have done it, I can't. Let's just put it this way. If you didn't see the video, he tries to go into the stands, as would, I think, any person on the planet. But that's just another example of something vile being yelled at a person as if they're not a person. But this was in real life, which is bold. And to be honest, I wouldn't take this guy on. That guy running after me. First of all, he's catching me pretty quick. Second of all, to feel comfortable enough to yell something like that to somebody is incomprehensible to me. But also quoted in this article, Christian Yelich basically said, yeah, this is totally normal. Everyone gets some sort of horrible thing said to them on social media every single day. It is not only the poor performers either. It's people who've been very successful in the past, maybe going through a little bit of a slump, and then they're getting decimated on social media. And he didn't have a specific reason or specific thing. He's just like, I just know that this happens a lot, and I get it from time to time as well. So it's not an isolated thing. This is not Lance McCullers had this one weirdo being crazy. There's a lot of people going crazy about sports. And you guys are sports fans. Yeah, and presumably a lot of you guys may know a Knicks fan. Just putting that out there, right? It's a tough time to be a Knicks fan right now. And I'm sure there's been a lot of vitriol thought of by people who love their team. I'm just saying. So let's talk a little bit about what can be done in these situations, because this is something that I don't think gets talked about enough. Like, people are like, okay, so what do you do? Like, what happens in this situation? So first things first, every major league team has a security person, right? It's almost like you have a security officer when you were in high school or middle school. You have a person who is usually an ex-police officer or ex-military, or usually both, a combination of both. And it's their job to go, they're kind of like an air marshal with you. They coordinate with local law enforcement when things are a problem, make sure the hotel's secure, all that kind of stuff, just basic stuff. But whenever there's an issue, your security officer is the person you go to first. And then they they utilize the rest of the league's resources as well. So if you're on the road, they connect with the other team's security officer, and then you get local security up. They reached out to them. One of the options was get a security team to take care of McCullers and his young family. James Crane was like, I'm going to pay for that. I'll get that taken care of. So that was all done using the security services, which this has been around for a really long time. They do great work. They never get any accolades. They never get any recognition. They never get anything. They just and that's kind of the point. They kind of work behind the shadows, but it's a really great resource to have if there's ever an issue or like, people have had stalkers before and stuff. You can imagine any sort of, person who's on TV a lot has to deal with a lot of this stuff. Fortunately, major sports have this as a resource. But the only other way to really protect yourself against this specific thing is to just leave social media, which I have talked about quite a bit in the past, because I have tried to do it a couple of times and it did not go as the way I wanted it to go. But there's been a lot of players who've done it. For example, Riley Green here, leave social media. He just deleted the whole thing after getting some death threats, after kind of having a slow start last year. He's like, you know what, I'm done with this.
Scott, you need to check out this Roback hoodie I have. It's 85 plus degrees here in Florida. Look, lightweight, feels great, cool colors. Perfect for those hot Florida days.
I agree, AJ. Color looks fire. And you can get your own sweatshirt, polo, hoodie. Go check out Roback. And if you do and you're a first-time customer, Roback.com using the code FOUL gets you 20% off your first purchase. RHOBACK.com, code FOUL. Get after it, FT fam.
I know specifically in 2021, right when I went over to the Mets, that Pete Alonso decided that he's only going to have like a business account that's run by his manager, but it's not going to be something that he is regularly checking. Okay. And I think that served his mental health quite a bit. I can't imagine what this offseason would have been like for him, trying to figure out where he's going to play when people are just chirping in his DMs all the time. So a lot of people are just leaving social media. I've always said that sucks, because I think one of the coolest things about social media is being able to connect with your athletes, being able to actually feel like you can say something and they'll hear you and interact with you. And 98%, 99% of interactions are positive for most guys. But if you're in constant fear of that one time where you're just going to get decimated on the internet, which is something that I thought about way more than I should have. When I struggled, I was like, dang, I'm really disappointed in myself. And then the second thing was, oh, I'm going to get destroyed on the internet because I'm so on the internet. Like, look what I do now, right? A lot of that was to get here. But I really wish I didn't have to go through some of that stuff. Specifically, in 2019, this is something I've never talked about publicly yet, and I've kind of come to the realization of what was going on. But in 2019, I gave up this home run. So that is Dom Smith. That is the last curveball I ever threw. You can see we have a 1-run lead, and now we don't have a lead, and I am so mad. My parents were there. My family was there. Kate was there. We ended up getting absolutely destroyed for the rest of this game. We got beat 14-4. So this became a joke later in my career, but I can tell you I was so emotionally charged that day that I just wanted to quit, which I actually tweeted this later. I'm off Twitter for a bit. Love you guys. Happy memeing. And I remember being like, I have to get out of here because I'm worried about it. And I was getting a lot of hate. I was getting a lot of people in DMs and stuff because I like to keep my DMs open because I like to talk to people about baseball. Unfortunately, I had to get out of there because it was just a lot of people disappointed in me. And this was Minnesota. People are very, very nice in Minnesota, and I didn't have to deal with it. But I remember specifically being like, I got to get out of here. I got to get out of here. I got to run away. And I think this is kind of encapsulates a lot of the things that I had going on with anxiety. I was just like, it's not the platform's fault. I got to be clear here, or even the heckling itself. It was a me thing. But the problem there, I have a loose earbud. I'm so sorry. It is bothering the crap out of me. It might be fixed now. I struggled a lot with it, and I think that I let that stuff bother me a lot more than it might have bothered other people, but that's not to say that you should have to take it either. And so it was always a really tough thing for me to deal with and juggle. Like, in reality, it was like, what is the pros and cons of being here? And I was always on the fence because I have and had such great interactions with people on the regular. So that's just something I distinctly remember. I remember going out with my parents after this and being like, just like really embarrassed by my appearance that day, and thinking that everyone thought I sucked in the restaurant. Nobody cared, including my family. Nobody cared but me. But it's just one of those life and death things. And that's a mild example, but I know I have experience with this, okay? So why do people do this? And let's talk a couple about, this is gonna give me a great opportunity to maybe get into some things that I haven't had the opportunity, but why does this happen regularly? Well, comments, for example, just the commenting situation in general. The ability to comment on somebody, anything, all the time. This isn't just sports, but this is what, in the context we're talking about, is maybe the worst thing that ever happened to society. Like just the unfettered, just say whatever you want side of things, as if that's like a law of nature that you should be able to comment anything you want on anything. I think that is. I don't think it's the posting per se. It's the mostly just being able to comment on anything. So, just imagine, like, you're at home, or there might be a rocket scientist out there, but if someone's posting about, I don't know, developing a rocket technology, and I just get on there and yell at how they're an idiot and they don't know anything about anything, what are the consequences of that? And the answer to that question is there aren't any. And that's why I'm bold. Things happen where we get to the point where there's death threats. Is like, nothing's gonna happen to me no matter what I say. When you feel that way, the worst comes out in people. I think we've seen that over time. For forever, honestly. Commenting is one. But another interesting part of this is the resurgence of betting. Now, I understand there's a lot of shows, including the network I'm on right now, that does betting sponsorships. And I want to be very clear here. This is not a comment on any betting organization, company, or anything that does their job. That's a whole nother thing to talk about. But there is an understanding we have to have here. Because, Riley Green specifically, but a lot of guys, it used to be fantasy baseball, and then it became betting. It was what was being mentioned in our DMs when horrible stuff was said, is like, you ruined my parlay, you messed up my, I had everything but one, and you messed it up because you gave up the lead. I wish, horrible thing, expletive. And the idea is, if you think about it, people are fanatics for sports. There's a lot of you that are fanatics for baseball. It really bothers you when your team messes up or doesn't win. But then you add monetary effect to you to that. Of course, it amplifies those emotional feelings one way or the other, whether you're excited that you won and that they won, or you're very mad because they lost and you lost. So you're actually losing and they're losing in that situation. Of course, that makes it much of a stronger feeling than it would have been. That's just logic. But there was actually a study done on this stuff, one very interesting out of Xavier. Now, I think I have it, yes. The article was called Game-Changing Innovation or Bad Beat, How Sports Betting Can Reduce Fan Engagement. So this is actually from a business standpoint. I thought this would be a cool thing to talk about. So if you think about it, and I always thought this as well, was if you add that extra layer of engagement, people will engage more thoroughly. I always thought that was true. Like, I thought that would, if that's something you did a lot and you felt more involved in the game, then you would stay more involved with that sport more often, which is really interesting. Like, that premise makes a lot of sense to me. These people did a study out of Xavier. These people being, let me make sure I say their names. It was in the Journal of Business Research. It was Dr. Ashley Blank, Dr. Catherine Loveland, and Dr. David Houghton. They're right here in the list right there. And they basically wanted to know, does the betting element add more engagement? And it was actually not what they thought it would be. It said, instead of, we find that when fans lose a bet, positive emotions and subsequent fan engagement decrease, obviously. So if you have a bet on something and it's your team, for example, and it doesn't go well, then but say you lose your bet, but they win, you're getting less enjoyment from that win. So the liking sports part is getting diminished one way or the other. It overrides that, which isn't great. It also says this effect holds for both moneyline bets and performance and prop bets, not tied to performance. So both types of bets, it comes out that way. In addition, we find that when fans win a bet, fan engagement does not increase either. Together, these results suggest that sports betting can be detrimental to fan engagement. So from a business standpoint, it might not make sense either, which is really interesting to me, right? Because I thought that was why. So if we're getting these detrimental effects, maybe it's something worth talking about and looking at. And that's important for me to think about, because I have skin in the game. I know people who are getting fear. Their families are being threatened over something as trivial as this. But under that whole umbrella, let me give you one last kind of way of looking at this to make it to even it out a little bit. Because if you went and looked at any comment section or any DM or anything with a person that you don't know in real life, if there was an ability, if there was like a meter on the side that said how serious this person is, with like a 1 out of 10 being they're just trolling to troll, with a 10 out of 10 being they really believe the things they're saying, if you went and just looked at any comment section, that number would vary wildly. There's people in there that are bots. There's people in there that don't actually care. They're just instigating. There's people in there that truly care about the thing they're saying. But once you see how wildly that stuff fluctuates, you realize how that vibe you're getting probably isn't real. And it's hard to constantly do that. That's something each human being needs to do on their own. But that would be helpful in realizing if people threatening you is real or not. Unfortunately, when we get to this level, to bring it all the way back to Lance McCullers, you have to take it seriously, because if you don't, there could be dire consequences, and that's where we're at. So stop it. Have some personal accountability. We talked about this a lot. Take some accountability for the things that you do and say, and everything takes care of itself, baby. Now, do I have an opinion whether or not we should keep going the way we're going. I think that there is very little that can be done about that at this point, but I do believe there are personal guide rails that people can do to protect themselves, and I hope that these guys are taking care of themselves. So if you are a person that feels the need to yell at a professional athlete that they should hurt themselves or their family, or that you are going to, don't. Because that's soft as warm butter. Warm butter is great for bagels, but not for people, okay?